10 lectures. All motion is a simultaneous extension from into the one still light. Chapter 1. Man's Purpose on Earth. My text from the Divine Iliad consists of a very few words. But these few words are potent with much meaning. Seek me. Know me. Be me. All men will come to me in due time, but theirs is the agony of awaiting. These few all-inclusive words clearly state the purpose of man on earth. Seek me. The purpose of man on earth is to seek God and find Him within himself. Know me. The purpose of man on earth is to seek happiness and peace through knowledge of God. Man finds happiness only in the measure of his knowledge of God and obedience to His law. Be me. The purpose of man on earth is to seek happiness and peace through knowledge of God. Man finds happiness only in the measure of his knowledge of God and obedience to His law. Be me. The purpose of man on earth, therefore, is to seek God, know God and be God by finding the kingdom of heaven. When man finds the kingdom of heaven, he will know all things. That is what Jesus meant when He said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." The only way that man can fulfill his purpose of finding God is by way of a series of transforming experiences occupying millions of years. Each experience of man during these millions of years gradually transforms him by giving him new knowledge of the nature of God. New knowledge renews the mind. Paul said, "Therefore, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." The only way that man can be transformed is by the renewing of his mind by knowing God's law. The word righteousness as used by Jesus meant balanced human relations under the law. The transformation of man from the jungle to the mountaintop is a mental one. It is a slow journey, from body sensing to mental consciousness, from electrical awareness of body to cosmic awareness of the spiritual man manifesting God through the body. Gradually this transformation of man has been taking place since his beginning. Time means nothing in the creative process. Man takes all the time he needs, but he who gains even one moment of time in the reconstruction or the transformation of himself advances that much nearer to the head of his glass. Therefore, it is essential that we who wish to be transformed become aware of God in us so that we may know His secrets, that we may know His purpose, that we may know and understand the play of cause and effect which He has written for you and me to manifest. Eons of time pass during which we gradually come to know our purpose. Word by word and line by line we slowly become aware of our parts in the play, but the agony of awaiting that knowledge is ours. All men will come to me in due time, but theirs is the agony of awaiting. Seek ye first, last and always the kingdom of heaven, for there is nothing else we have done since we became an amoeba, polarized in the ooze of the planet by the light of the sun, until we have reached the top of our high mountain. That is all we ever do, forever and forever. During countless lives we just keep on searching for the kingdom of heaven within us. It is a long journey, a tremendous journey. It is the ageless journey of immortal man seeking recognition of his immortality through his mortality. When mortal man finally finds his immortality, he finds that for which he is searching, and knows it as God. The two universes in which we live and have our being are the universe of sensing, from which we gain our information from impressions of happenings and experiences, and the mental universe from which we get our knowledge. Knowledge may come to us through our senses by transforming sensed impressions to our consciousness through meditation, or it may come to us directly from the cosmos by inspiration. Information is but a record imprinted upon the brain of how to do things, of which we know not the why. Until we know the why, we have no knowledge. All down the centuries, right up to this day, man has had but little knowledge and much information. He has known how to produce marvelous effects, but he does not know the cause of those effects. We must know the cause of that which we have been cognizant of and satisfied with as an effect. To be aware of effect is to be informed of the physical nature of the universe. Everyone can be informed of the physical nature of the universe and still lack knowledge. Until he begins to know, he is still man in the body, quite unaware of the kingdom of heaven within him. Until man begins to be inspired from the cosmos and gain knowledge directly from the source of all knowledge, he is still sensed man of the flesh and his genius has not unfolded. Although we have reached a far stage in our search for God, we are still in our barbarian stage of unfoldment. We are still conquering, killing and exploiting our fellow men for self-profit and, in consequence, breeding fear and hate. But there is hope. For we are at the eve of a transition toward a so much greater knowledge of God. Our whole civilization will be lifted to a higher level if the seed of this new knowledge spreads fast enough to offset the seeds of old thinking and practices. We are deceived by the seeming advancement of science into believing that we are highly civilized. As long as we have not arrived at a point in which we know the nature of God sufficiently to know of our unity with our fellow man, to make it unthinkable to even hurt another, much less kill, rob or exploit him, we are still uncivilized barbarians. We are just reaching the point where we know that we hurt ourselves when we hurt another, that when we break God's law, His law breaks us to an equal extent, that the Sermon on the Mount and the Golden Rule are not just good advice given abstractly to accept or reject as we choose, but that inviolate cosmic law lies behind them. We are just becoming aware that we must readjust all our human relations to conform to God's law or perish periodically utter degradation of our hard-built civilizations. We are actually at a point of threatened destruction of our present civilization because of having made our own law of might against right, and having practiced it in the building of our empires by forcibly taking from our fellow men that which we wanted for ourselves, and enslaving them under our lordship. We have learned that he who lives by the sword shall die by the sword is cosmic law and not just an abstraction. The whole world has paid dearly for that lesson by reaping the frightful harvest of the seeds of hate, fear and greed it has sown. For every man the world has killed, it has paid tenfold in blood. Its treasuries, filled with our robbing, have been emptied by robbers whom we have ourselves created to rob and kill us. Our present civilization is dying as a result of its self-inflicted ills. We must learn that this electric universe of motion is divided into wave cycles which are equally divided into opposite expressions. Also that our actions in all of our human relations are wave cycles which must balance their actions of giving with their consequent reactions of re-giving. Likewise, we must learn that the giving half of each cycle must precede the re-giving. When we learn to practice that inexorable law of nature fully, civilization will then progress steadily and mankind will find happiness in its resultant unity. Until the time comes in man's unfolding, he will continually be broken to the extent of his own breaking of cosmic law. Our only hope of a resurrection of our dying civilization lies in a sufficiently greater comprehension of the nature of the God for whom mankind is searching to enable him to both comprehend and obey God's cosmic law of love upon which his universe is founded. When we learn that nature never takes anything which is not given, and that the cosmic law of love is based upon giving and re-giving equally, we shall have advanced far toward our spiritual goal. Likewise, when we practice that law of rhythmic balanced interchange in all transactions between the opposites of nature, we shall have advanced so far physically that our entire civilization will be assured of its eternal continuity instead of being continually condemned to periodic destruction. Man's purpose on earth is to build happiness, peace and goodwill on earth. He can find peace, happiness and goodwill only as he ceases building chaos. He has been building chaos and expecting his chaos to crystallize into a unity that is impossible. It is incredible that man cannot see the impossibility of finding peace and happiness through practices which make peace and happiness impossible. The time has now come when man must find that the whole universe is purposeful, and that each thing must fulfill its purpose. Also he must find that purposefulness lies in the direction of law and order, not in the direction of chaos. It has taken man a long time to arrive even at this state of unfoldment where he now knows that greed, selfishness and disunity cannot build a stable civilization. The incredible thing is that he thought it could. Millions of years ago, he began his journey as an actor in this divine drama unaware of a single line of his part, learning it line by line. experience by experience down through the ages, from one incarnation to another, from body to body, from record of soul and body to record of soul and body, a continuity of life which began in the beginning for everyone as an individual single cell. An individuality has kept pace with its gradual growth as each actor fulfilled his purpose on earth by playing his part line by line as it came to him out of the dark. Once when I was in Washington, some people told me there was a very interesting machine that counts, adds, subtracts, multiplies and calculates the most complex mathematical problems, accomplishing in a few moments what a great mathematician could not finish in months. It took years to make this machine, for there were many thousands of parts to it and experimentation was in process for years. I was invited to see that machine. When I got there, a few little parts of it were assembled. They were working, doing something collectively, but the greater part of it was distributed and in boxes. There were thousands of separate little pieces of metal. Large pieces, wheels with gears, shining metals and dull metals, castings and finely cut parts, big and little, complex and simple, lounging all around the great room on chairs and in boxes, all numbered as to their place and purpose. Now imagine some of the parts of that machine saying, "Well, what are we here for? What is this all about? What is the purpose of all this?" They take us out and bore holes in us and put us back again. They bore another hole and put us together in groups and try to make us work at something, then they put us back again. They change our shape and recast us in another metal, then they polish us. It has all been going on for so long and not one of us knows what it is all about. It all seems foolish. And another big wheel might say, "I am beginning to see the purpose of this. They have tried me out and at last I am beginning to see what it is all about. I seem to feel that we are all just extensions of each other, all made to manifest some one purpose." Some geniuses or mystics are now at that stage in our civilization where they know that all men are extensions of each other. Some go farther and actually know what it is all about. Eventually they put that machine all together and got it working. Each part was then aware that it was an essential part of the whole. Each knew that not one of those parts could be left out without impairing the whole. They knew that each of those many parts was a unit. For the first time they began to see their purposefulness, and realized the necessity of expressing individual perfection in the fulfillment of their collective purpose. They then knew that all were one. Man must begin to see the unitary principle of man, knowing that there are not separate men or separate individuals, but that the whole man idea is one. He must know that all mankind is connected with every other part of mankind, all geared together by the one omnipresent light of God, which centers all as one and motivates all as one. Until man knows that separation from God is impossible even for 1 second, he does not begin to have knowledge. In our search for God, there are so many things we do have to know in order to comprehend His law. And we cannot obey it until we do comprehend it. In 100 years there has been a vast physical transformation of all civilization through greater advancement given to us by the great scientific geniuses who have learned how to do things with matter and the forces of nature. But when you ask science the why of things, science flounders. Scientists say, all we know is that the universe is light, just electric waves of light. We have only recently acquired that information. Only within the last 25 years have we become aware that the whole universe of matter, your body and mine, trees, suns and planets, are just waves of light. Science has also said, if we knew the secret of light we would have a new civilization. We might even become aware of God through knowing that secret. There is the answer to that new civilization that is coming now. For we are going to know the secret of light, and we are going to be aware of the nature of God. Man has never been aware of the nature of God. In fact, it has often been declared that the human mind could never comprehend God. That statement has been based upon the assumption that the reason we could never comprehend God is that our senses could not detect God. It is true that we cannot see God, but we can know Him. And therein is the essence of New Age thinking. The next 100 years will see as great a spiritual advance in the culture of our civilization as it has seen physically during the past 100 years. That which we cannot see, we can know. We can see the bodies of men, but we cannot see man, for the Supreme Being within man is invisible. He cannot be seen. He can only be known. For the same reason we cannot see God, but we can know Him, and we can know the nature of God by knowing His laws and creative processes. When we know the nature of God sufficiently to reflect His nature in us, we become God to the extent of our ability to reflect His nature in us. By knowing the secret of light, we will know the mystery of life and death, of reincarnation, of matter and space, and the relationship of suns to planets. The more we know the light, the more we shall realize our purpose in manifesting that light gloriously. Every moment of life in the light is a moment of glorification in the awareness of our omnipotence in manifesting the light. Someone once asked Toscanini's son, "What was the highest point in your father's life?" The answer was, "Every point in it is his highest point." He lives gloriously and fully every moment of his life, whether conducting an orchestra or peeling an orange. That is what we must do when we fully know the purposefulness of life. Live it gloriously by living it ecstatically. We can live it ecstatically only as we know the ecstatic nature of God and become like Him through being continually inspired by communion with Him. To become like Him, we must become aware of our identity with Him. We must know Him as Creator of all that is. And in so doing know ourselves as Creator of all that is. God's one purpose is to express His will by giving of His love and the fulfillment of His law. Our one purpose is to give love and conformity with the law. God has no other purpose, nor has man. Nature expresses that purpose in every action which records God's knowing through His thinking. The more we find the God of our searching, the more we know Him and become like Him. That is what I mean by the perpetual transformation of man, as man more fully knows his purpose on earth by continually finding the kingdom of heaven within him. That is also what I mean by constant communication with God, communion of identity which is oneness, not communion with Him as though He were another. The more we thus know God, the less we pray in the traditional customary sense, which means finding words to express our desire periodically whenever we feel that there is something to ask for. Whenever I feel that ecstasy of love in me, I know that God and I are working together as one, not He and me, but just one. When I am inspired to create with Him as one, I know that His knowing and His thinking are my knowing and my thinking. My works are always masterly when I am thus one with the light. For I know that I am giving out God's love as commanded of me. I know that my inspiration is God's silent voice being recorded through me. That ecstatic love state of my consciousness is my forever prayer which gives me my desires because of knowing God's desires. Whenever I am in that state, I am praying, and whenever the demands of earth and body cut me off from that continuous state of communion, then things are wrong. Work done then is not masterly. All the little troubles of earth and ills of body pile up in front of me to become mountains until I am again in the light of love. When that happens, all inharmonies disappear, needed supply comes toward me instead of my seeking it. Ills of body are as though they were not, and omnipotential power is mine again. Thus it is that humanity flounders purposelessly because of being unaware of purpose. Thus it is that weaknesses, fears and illnesses attack the bodies of individual and collective man whenever he fails to manifest God's will by the giving of love. Normalcy of body and mind can come only to him who is a purposeful part of nature. So long as purposefulness is manifested by any unit of God's creation, just so long will normalcy of that unit continue. The slightest breach of the law is instantly balanced by recording abnormalcy in that unit. The measure of such recorded abnormalcy is the measure of that breach of the law. In this manner the units of nature which are expressing their purposefulness are continued in normalcy throughout their cycles, while those which breach their normalcy are attended with the consequences of their imbalanced actions. Nature thus manifests its law by getting rid of purposeless units, for as soon as any of them cease to be purposeful by expressing the universal love principle, nature shortens their cycles to eliminate them. Anger, for example, is not love, therefore it is not a purposeful manifestation of the fundamental principle of nature. He who expresses anger breaks the universal law of love. For so doing, that law breaks him by creating toxic effects within his body in the measure of his own self-condemnation. This is a balanced universe of love. Every wave of God's thinking records that absolute balance of love. Every imbalanced wave of man's thinking creates distortions which must be balanced by himself. These distortions do not affect the balance of the universe. Its purposefulness continues in its balanced expression of universal law. Consider our present civilization in this light. Is it not plainly evident that mankind has been breaking the law so violently that he has himself condemned himself to self-destruction? The whole world body is sick unto death for its flagrant breach of purposefulness by breeding hate and fear through manifesting greed instead of manifesting the love nature of God. The entirety of civilization is slated for self-destruction for that reason, and its only chance for a renaissance lies in replacing greed with love in all human relations. Over and over again man has broken himself by thus disobeying the law, and he will forever continue to break himself until he comprehends the law sufficiently to obey it. Through comprehension man can save himself. That is what Paul meant when he said, "Therefore be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." When we know the fulcrum and lever principle of the wave, we shall know the father-mother principle of this creating universe. We shall comprehend the mechanics of that principle as applied to every action in nature. We shall then comprehend that the universe is merely an electric record of God's thinking. The whole product of his thinking is informed by the images of his knowing. That is what the universe is, the one idea of God's knowing divided into the many ideas of his thinking, and those many ideas multiplied into countless units of formed bodies of those many ideas. The forms thus recorded never become the ideas. That which is God never becomes matter. That which is the still light is extended into the two moving lights to record God's knowing by his thinking, but we who are the imaged record of that thinking are not the idea from which we are extended. Our bodies are but the extensions of our God selves. Creator and creation might thus be reduced to the following simple formula expressed in several word groups but all of the same meaning. 1 knowing. 2 thinking. 3 product. 1 power. 2 expression of power. 3 result. 1 stillness. 2 action. 3 record of action. 1 light. 2 light waves. 3 matter. 1 fulcrum. 2 wave lever. 3 motion. 1 magnetic light. 2 electricity. 3 reflection. 1 reality. 2 imagination. 3 unreal image. 1 sexlessness. 2 father-mother. 3 formed bodies. 1 idea. 2 division of idea. 3 projection. 1 oneness. 2 positive negative. 3 illusion. 1 love. 2 giving re-giving. 3 repetition. 1 life. 2 life death. 3 rebirth. 1 cause. 2 expression. 3 effect. 1 God. 2 desire I am God. 3 The universe. And so up to this time we have been floundering around in these questions of life and death, emotions, love, hate, greed, and selfishness. We have been accumulating things, material things to possess, things of earth which must be returned to earth. Our ideas of wealth and power have been based upon what our bodies needed. For that reason we became selfish, greedy, cruel and brutal. Humans become inhuman beastly by killing, robbing and enslaving other humans. The more religiously devout we became, the more inhuman we became, even to the point of devoutly asking God to aid us in our inhumanity by helping us to kill. Also, up to this time our search for the one God has bred many religions based upon false concepts of God. God is our Father. We are his beloved children, light extensions of his very self. God is love, yet practically all religions conceive him as an angry, wrathful God, ever ready to inflict terrible punishment upon his sinful, wicked children, a God of sorrows, capable of suffering deep anguish because of our transgressions. Instead of searching for a God of light within ourselves, we have searched outside of ourselves for a God of form. We have demanded an extraneous God which our senses could visualize. For that reason we have made thousands upon thousands of gods of some imaged form carved in wood or stone, and worship those forms as idols. Messengers of God, such as Jesus, have appeared at times to tell us the true nature of God. We invariably crucified them, then worshipped them after realizing their divinity. Religion of today is largely idolatrous for the reason that our primacy demands a God who appeals to the senses. For that reason millions of men worship God through Buddha, Jesus, Mohammed and other messengers, whose form they can sense as visualized images of God. Those who do so have not yet unfolded sufficiently to know God himself as the I Am of all the universe. Those many millions would consider one to be a blasphemer who claimed that he walks and talks directly with God in close communion. Yet mankind has unfolded to that state of consciousness where there are many who have found the kingdom of heaven within themselves to such an extent that they no longer ask intercession from men of earth for the privilege of contacting God through them. The mass of mankind still holds tight to the traditions of pagan and heathen superstitions and beliefs. These believe that ordained priests and ministers can save their souls from sin through baptismal rites and ceremonies. They believe this to such an extent that if a child dies without being baptized, it will have no soul, or that it will be cast into everlasting fires for having been born in sin. Such horrible beliefs indicate that barbaric state of the mass of today's humanity. Hell is paved with the skulls of innocent babes, is a common expression which evidences this horrible belief of many religions of today which still keep alive the blood beliefs and practices of pagan ancestors. The enlightened ones who have come to know God in them are fully aware that no human has any power whatsoever to remit the sins of another, or to save or condemn his soul, or to intercede for him with God. Man cannot ordain man with power to do anything which a man cannot do for himself by direct unity with God, for God centers every man, awaiting his awareness of that fact. The coming age of new thinking will see the end of heathen and pagan religious practices for countless thousands, and these will become the seed for the ending of such practices in those of lesser knowing. Thus man's search for God, which is his sole purpose on earth, will find great fulfillment in these coming days of man's new unfolding. The time has come for all mankind to know that there is nothing which stands between him and God, and that no man who has lived within a mere few thousand years out of all eternity should be worshipped in place of, or even as a symbol of, the eternal God of all creation who created these men as he created you and me. All God worship through man is as idolatrous as the worship of God through graven images is idolatrous. When man knows God, he will no longer need to sense him through formed images. The time has now come when men must again be transformed into higher beings through new comprehension. In the cycle in which Jesus lived, he could not even tell his people those things he would tell them today. He then said, I have yet many things to say unto you, but ye cannot bear them now. Now we are ready for new knowledge. We are ready for our new day. In the last 100 years we have been made ready for it. Our comprehension is greater. We know that what happens anywhere happens everywhere. Even 1 century ago man did not know that. We have been prepared to know things that man of 100 years ago could not even begin to understand. God has raised our comprehension so that we shall understand him when he talks directly to us through the silent voice of inspiration. God has prepared us through his messengers, the mystics, geniuses, poets and musicians who have given us our culture. He has talked with us through his rhythms of the heavens by making them a part of us to quicken us with their ecstasy in our search for the kingdom of heaven. In this age of transition between sensing and knowing, we must acquire cosmic knowledge through the eyes and ears of the spirit instead of those of the body. We must know how to find God by getting away from the body. We must know how to talk with God so that we know the nature of God. Moreover, we must know and obey God's law. Many people say, the secret of light is quite over my head. I get a little bit at a time. Thank God if you even get a little at a time. The reason you get a little at a time instead of much is simply because the transition from sensing to knowing is a difficult one. If you have been accustomed to acquiring information through the senses, that habit is so strong that you just try to memorize what your senses have recorded on your brain instead of closing your book and talking it over with God directly. That is the only way you can know anything. Your failure to understand is because the sensed records you have engraved upon your brain have no understanding in them. Knowledge is cosmic. When you take your sensed impressions into the light of yourself and ask that knowledge be revealed to you through the light, you will then have knowledge concerning what you have been reading and not until. How often you have heard the expression, "Be still and know." To be still for the purpose of knowing is to think your information back into the light of your inner self until you have stopped thinking. Silent meditation fixes that information into your consciousness as knowledge. Very few people do that. They are quite content with storing vast quantities of information upon their brains. Very few know that they can talk it over with God by thinking it back into His still light, which they also are. Those who do know that acquire great knowledge and power to co-create with God. Thinking is not easy. If you study music for the first time, you will find that out. You will be lucky if in half an hour your brain is not too tired to remember anymore. You have only learned a few notes and made a few sounds which are not music. It takes months and months of doing that before you know music well enough to produce music instead of sound. Until that which you read from the notes reaches your very soul, you do not know music nor can you produce music. For this reason, everyone should bend every effort to make the transition from sensing to knowing so that his creations can be powerful and masterly interpretations of the light of all-knowing instead of being paired like repetitions of memory stored in one's brain as information is stored in an encyclopedia. It is only through thus adding to our knowledge that we become transformed to a greater awareness of our immortality. Like the little parts of the complex machine that serve their purpose only when they become one whole, so do we know our purpose on this journey only when we are enabled to forget our separateness by knowing the whole. A man with a certain name lives at a certain address and thinks of himself as separate and apart from all creation. A brook comes from the sea by way of the heavens. It seems to be a unit which is separated from everything else, but it is forever connected with the heavens and the sea. We do not see the connection between the heavens and the brook, but they are, nevertheless, forever connected. Though we cannot see the connection, we can know it. Likewise, man cannot see his connection with his source in the universal sea of light, but he can know it. That is the very essence of the transition man is now undergoing, which will transform him into a higher being. The transformation will come through man's greater awareness of the light within him. The more man becomes transformed through knowledge of the light, the more he knows that his purpose in life is to find God in order to become one with Him.